The Falling Knife. 57-year-old Zhao Yunji is sitting calmly on a sidewalk bench with a black-handled kitchen knife buried deep in his skull, the 5-inch blade sticking up like a flag. He doesn't scream for some reason. He doesn't even seem bothered. Only a while ago, Zhao was taking a morning walk through a residential area in Guangyan, China, when the knife fell from several feet and sank into his head. Surprisingly, he felt no pain, so Zhao just walked it off, completely unaware that a knife had just gone right through his skull. It wasn't until bystanders started screaming and pointing that Zhao reached up, felt the blade, and began to feel dizzy. Yep, only then did blood start pouring. Paramedics got there just in time and rushed him to the hospital. With x-rays, the doctors found that the blade had missed his brain's biggest blood vessels by mere millimeters. But the problem now was removing the knife. Thus, the surgeons spent an hour delicately taking it out of Zhao's head. Luckily, he survived, but not without damage. The poor old man became overly sensitive to cold and would suffer from recurring headaches throughout his life. The knife's owner, a man named Wu from the 8th floor apartment, visited Zhao in the hospital to apologize and pay medical bills, admitting he'd left the knife on a wobbly flower pot on his balcony. It's raining dogs. April 15th, 2018. CCTV footage shows Ms. Zhang minding her own business and walking toward the entrance of an office building in Guangzhou, China, when something drops from the top of the frame and slams directly onto her neck. She collapses to the ground, but not before she takes a quick peep to see what just hit her. It's a dog, a huge white dog. A bystander called the emergency services, who arrived to see Zhang unresponsive. She spent more than 20 days in the ICU with a massive concussion and severe spinal cord injuries, leaving her permanently unable to walk. Investigation revealed that the dog had been wandering on the roof of the office building before it slipped. It wasn't thrown, it just spotted movement below and leaned too far over the edge. When police asked who owned the dog, no one came forward, so when the case was taken to court, the judge asked all residents of the building to split Zhang's medical bill totaling $18,000. Every tenant was punished for a mystery neighbor's negligence, and the dog was never seen again. An unbreakable window. On Friday evening in 1993, a man runs across a corporate boardroom of the Toronto Dominion Center and hurls his shoulder into a window. He bounces off harmlessly and laughs. Well, hey, it's only the 24th floor of a giant skyscraper 200 feet off the ground. What could possibly go wrong? Meet Gary Hoy, a funny corporate lawyer at Holden Day Wilson, entertaining new law students with his signature party trick, proving the building's windows are unbreakable. He has done this stunt a million times before, and the glass always held, at least until today. To really drive his point, Hoy goes for a second hit. He backs up, makes a run, and slams against the glass again. In a blink, the entire pane pops out of the wall, and Hoy goes with it, flying on the glass carpet and, he's falling. In mere seconds, he and the pane of glass crash into the rigid courtyard. Emergency responders are called, but it turns out Hoy had died on impact. The death is ruled accidental, not suicide, but the investigation revealed the cruel irony. The glass was, in fact, unbreakable, and Hoy was correct. However, the metal frame holding it in place had degraded over time, weakened by repeated impacts and structural fatigue. Those were accidents caused by stuff or people falling from the sky, but the next stories are way wilder, so hit that subscribe button and let's dive in. Crushed by a coffin. It's a loud and chaotic day in North Toraja, Indonesia, as a dozen men struggle up a bamboo ladder with a massive coffin on their heads, and suddenly the supports snap. Bodies fall 10 feet to the ground in a shower of wood and clothes. Right above them is the coffin, and it drops like a giant rock onto a man standing below. But it's not just any man. This is Samen Kondorora, and the woman inside the coffin is his dead mother, Berta Kondorora. You see, the ceremony is a traditional Torajan funeral to honor the dead before placing them in a high tower. However, the bamboo ladder was not properly reinforced. Although bystanders were able to pull him free quickly, Samen was unconscious and bleeding heavily from the skull. Despite them rushing him to the hospital, he died before the doctors could operate. The family declined to press charges for negligence. In Torajan belief, deaths that happen during funerals are often seen as intentional signs from the deceased, not accidents. So his mother Berta wanted him to be with her. Days later, Samen was buried right next to Berta in a joint cemetery. Mother and son reunited in the ground. Fatal freeze. A spa employee arrives at her workplace in Henderson, Nevada, and finds her manager inside a cryochamber. She is blue, frozen hard as a rock, and curled like a baby at the bottom of the tank. The night before, the manager, Chelsea Ake-Salvacion, had stayed up late to treat her own sore muscles. She had used the machine dozens of times before, but it was different this time. She broke the golden rule: never go into the cryochamber alone. And just so you know, it was a nitrogen chamber, which makes it a real big problem. You see, liquid nitrogen doesn't cool, it just pushes off oxygen. As the fog rose inside the small booth, the oxygen level dropped in seconds. She didn't scream or struggle, she just passed out from having little air, slumping to the floor of the tank within moments. However, the real nightmare was yet to begin. With no attendant to turn off the machine or pull her out, the chamber continued blasting nitrogen directly onto her unconscious body. She died from asphyxiation within minutes, but her body remained in the machine, which froze her remains rock solid overnight. The coroner later determined that she suffocated first, meaning she was dead long before the freezing finished the job. Tomb behind the freezer. It's January 2019, and contractors are tearing down an old supermarket in Iowa. But the moment they get to the massive industrial freezer and pull it away to the side, they find a mummified body wedged in the dark space behind it. The blue clothes on the dead body match a missing person report from 2009. Larry Eli Murillo Moncada, a 25-year-old supermarket worker who disappeared during a snowstorm. Nearly a decade ago, Larry had stormed out of his parents' home barefoot in a blizzard, hallucinating and super pissed. He had made his way to the nearby No Frills supermarket where he worked at the time and climbed on top of the industrial coolers. Turns out this used to be a secret spot employees used for unauthorized breaks or to hide. But on that day, Larry slipped and fell into the tiny gap between the back of the cooler and the wall. He screamed for help, but the compressors were so loud that no one heard him. After 2 days of being stuck in that tight space, he ultimately died. The No Frills supermarket continued to operate with his body behind the freezer, finally closing down in 2016. And even then, Larry remained undiscovered for nearly a decade until the contractors began demolition. The lead investigator noted that Larry's mother had told police for years that she felt he was still at the store.
Mom is the one that suspected at the time that maybe he was in the store.
Solo por allá se podía entrar.
A mother's intuition proved right.
However, no one looked behind the freezer until the building itself was being destroyed. She was right the entire time. The latex poison. It's the year 1966, and a brilliant chemist accidentally spills 2 drops of liquid onto her gloved hand in her Dartmouth College lab. She washes it off, finishes her work, and goes home like it's no big deal. This is Karen Wetterhahn, an expert on toxic metal exposure and a chemistry professor at Dartmouth. She knows the protocols better than anyone. However, that experience didn't save her from what happened that night. Because it wasn't just any liquid, it was mercury. For 3 months, Karen felt perfectly fine. She taught her classes, published papers, and spent time with family. But the mercury from the drops was quietly destroying her nervous system from the inside. Later that year, Karen suddenly starts bumping into walls, her speech slurs, and she becomes clumsy. At first, she thinks it's just stress and exhaustion from work. However, it soon becomes clear that something more is going on. So doctors run tests to find something they thought was impossible. Karen's blood had massive amounts of mercury, 80 times higher than the lethal threshold. When they trace it back, it leads them to that single exposure in August. Those 2 drops were dimethylmercury to be exact, and this lethal chemical melted the latex gloves, passed through her skin, and entered her bloodstream. It is irreversible, and Karen's brain was being eaten away. She soon slips into a coma and dies 6 months later, but she didn't die in vain. Before she lost consciousness, Karen forced her doctors to write down every symptom, every test result, and every timeline detail. She insisted they publish her case in the New England Journal of Medicine. She did this so she would be the last victim. And so far, she really was the last to die from that chemical. Her death caused labs to switch from latex gloves to heavy-duty silver shield gloves. And in doing that, who knows how many lives she may have saved. If you enjoyed this video, then you should probably check out this one.